Opening the flank strategically, this flank opening immediately asserts control over central squares and offers flexible piece development options. Mirroring white's pawn on the flank immediately establishes a balanced center, setting the stage for a dynamic queenside struggle. Developing the knight here prepares for central pawn advancement and controls key squares in black's territory. Establishing central influence and preparing to contest crucial diagonals adds immediate dynamic play. Securing the d4 square with this knight establishes a robust central presence, preparing for aggressive pawn advancements. Challenging the center aggressively, black immediately opens lines and aims to disrupt white's pawn structure for active piece play. Capturing the pawn immediately opens the d-file for potential piece activity and avoids a cramped pawn structure for white. Reclaiming the pawn with the knight immediately challenges white's central control and opens up black's bishop on the queen side. Asserting central space, white boldly challenges black's knight, creating immediate pawn tension and opening lines for future piece activity. Challenging the knight's central dominance disrupts white's pawn structure and opens lines for counterplay. This bishop targets the c5 pawn's vulnerable diagonal, aiming to disrupt black's queenside structure. Sacrificing a piece for tactical chaos, this knight boldly interrupts white's development and aims to disrupt the king's safety. Exposing your monarch to a check is a serious positional concession, inviting further disruption. Sacrificing material to exploit the misplaced king's weakness, aiming to shatter white's defensive structure with a follow-up attack. Relinquishing the central squares and steering the king into a vulnerable position, white begins a precarious dance with exposed royalty. Recapturing the pawn with the knight repositions it centrally, preparing to contest squares like d4 and solidifying black's queenside presence against white's exposed monarch. Expanding territory on the queenside, this pawn push bravely challenges black's knight's outposts and opens lines for white's pieces. Opening the c-file and disrupting the pawn chain creates immediate tactical possibilities. Releasing the kingside initiative, white aims to reinforce the center and potentially attack the queenside pawn mass. Unleashing the knight to c5 aims to disrupt white's central pawn structure and prepare for a potential kingside assault by repositioning pieces. Unleashing queenside pressure, this maneuver prepares to exploit the weakened b-pawn and potentially disrupt black's piece coordination. Solidifying the center and preparing development, this maneuver aims to challenge white's pawn chain and open lines. Unleashing central pawns, white opens lines to pressure black's cramped position and potentially exploit the kingside imbalance. Reclaiming central space and preparing to uncoil the queenside pieces after the pawn sacrifice. Developing the bishop to attack that isolated pawn while subtly preparing for a kingside pawn storm. Targeting the weak pawn on b4 with the knight, while simultaneously preparing to contest the crucial central squares, demonstrates a dynamic, multi-pronged approach. Preparing to eye the kingside, this bishop repositions for an eventual attack, ignoring immediate pawn weakness. Developing the bishop to a square where it actively eyes the d3 bishop offers improved piece coordination. Initiating central pressure by claiming the open file, this maneuver seeks to disrupt black's queenside expansion and create attacking possibilities along the c-file. Sacrificing central space for a kingside blockade, this knight anchors a potential queenside storm. Shifting queen to d2 aims to eye the queenside, potentially supporting a b5 pawn push and coordinating pieces for central pressure. Asserting pressure on the queenside, this move aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and open lines for counterplay. Initiating a kingside pawn storm now may overextend white's position and create weaknesses around the king. Conceding the open file allows white to dominate the c-file, a significant positional disadvantage for black. Regaining the piece opens the diagonal for your king's defense and strengthens central control. This move aims to activate the queen and contest the c-file, a promising central control attempt. Aggressively opening lines toward black's king, aiming to exploit the exposed d7 square with the upcoming pawn push. A stabilizing maneuver, this pawn advances to create a crucial defensive screen for the monarch. Aggressively challenging the rook's position, white aims to disrupt black's defensive structure and create attacking opportunities. A bold challenge, this bishop's venture threatens to disrupt white's queenside while leaving its king exposed to discovery. Reclaiming the initiative on the f-file offers active counterplay after that rook exchange. Unleashing the bishop aims to activate the queenside, but consider the pawn's structure's vulnerability to upcoming rook pressure. Aggressively seeking initiative, the rook now eyes the vulnerable kingside, aiming to pry open lines. Unleashing a knight to eye the queenside, black disrupts white's established pawn structure and opens pathways for further queenside infiltration. Seeking to consolidate central influence and prepare for a pawn storm, this queen repositioning avoids immediate tactical complications while keeping pressure on the king side. A bold venture aims to exploit the unprotected queen, daring white to defend it or face immediate tactical fallout. Unleashing the pawn storm, white sacrifices space for active piece play, aiming to disrupt black's cramped structure and open lines. The bishop retreats, shoring up the queenside pawn structure while eyeing the central tension that white has built. Sacrificing the bishop for pawn structure disruption opens critical lines for attack. Liberating that passed pawn opens up new diagonal threats and forces white's pieces into awkward defensive postures. Opening that d-file suddenly injects dynamic possibilities, forcing black to confront an immediate central breakthrough. The knight's repositioning towards the queenside aims to challenge white's advanced pawn, but it isolates itself from the kingside defense. Aggressively eyeing the exposed black king, white seeks to exploit the weakened light squares after this queen repositioning. The queen repositions, preparing to exploit the open queenside files and pressure white's vulnerable pawns. Sacrificing the b-pawn to open lines for the rook seems ambitious, potentially a bid to dislodge black's well-placed pieces. Challenging white's control of the queenside and aiming for an exchange to ease pressure. Sacrificing the pawn opens crucial attacking lines, directly targeting the black king's precarious position. Liberating the knight from that cramped square allows for immediate counterplay and creates significant pressure on white's d-pawn. Disrupting black's queenside structure with the rook offers attacking chances, but abandons kingside defense. Finally, a sanctuary for the bishop emerges from the storm, hoping to find a safer haven beyond the immediate conflict. A desperate attempt to dislodge the pawn and expose the enemy king, but a costly gamble. Fleeing the discovered check exposes the king to potential tactical pounces across the board. Confidently snatching the rook creates a decisive material advantage, but watch out for your exposed monarch. Recapturing the bishop seems logical, but it opens up the file for the rook and doesn't address white's attacking potential. The rook boldly ventures forward, seizing the open file and threatening immediate disruption of black's position. A desperate attempt to construct a pawn shield, sacrificing crucial central space and exposing the king further. Opening the h-file now offers a direct assault pathway. The rook's sacrifice on a3 opened a diagonal. Now black uses the bishop to contest the initiative. Sacrificing the rook to clear the way for your queen and open up a winning endgame advantage.